Om Namah Shivaya. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we'll complete the discussion about the Nirvikalpa Samadhi that Surjit had asked earlier. So what the yoga system does, they have a very elaborate and a very systematic way of being without the encumbrance of the mind. So just like you have the sleep where there is no mind, no thoughts, you're just a pure consciousness. So the Nirvikalpa Samadhi is exactly like that, but you are not asleep. It's a very beautiful thing. And so all these 8 steps that they have allow you to systematically diminish the presence of your mind. And the last step before Nirvikalpa is what is called Savikalpa. So Vikalpa means sort of like a change or a difference. Any difference is called Vikalpa. Okay? So the stage before Nirvikalpa is called Savikalpa. In the Savikalpa, you still have a difference between you, the meditator, and what you are meditating on. So there is a difference between them. Okay? And if you practice that long enough and effectively enough, then even that difference goes. You are just not a meditator, you are just a meditation. And this state where there are no thoughts whatsoever, you are the only one, remains. Okay? Okay, so this is the, so there is a question that can come from it. Isn't this what we are also seeking in the Vedanta knowledge and so on? Then what's the difference? Because if you are able to do this, so you can do this without really studying books and having a guru or anything like that. You need to have a guru that effectively tells you how to do meditation. But those are easier to find. You haven't gone through the background or anything like that. You just follow these steps. And there's more to it. I'm overdoing it a little bit because your attitudes, your sense of what's holding you back, and so on, all have to be tackled over time. But eventually, yes, you can reach a sense of Nirvikalpa. So the question remains, if that is the case, then why do we need to do Vedanta? Okay? And this kind of a question prevents a lot of people from going into Vedanta. They feel this is too complicated and too hard and so on, and we don't have the ability to really spend that much time. We can just straight away go into this and so on. So a lot of this transcendental meditation is following that path. I think I was telling you that there was I don't know when I was talking here or maybe in California, it's kind of like vague, but there was one uncle of Pami's, my wife's uncle, who had come from India. This is a long time ago, when we had just graduated from the PRC course after 2.5 years with Swamiji. So he came and he was saying, so what did you do all this? So I told him that, we did Bhagavad Gita, we did all these Upanishads, and then we do Brahma Sutra, and all of these kinds of things. So he says, for how long? So we said 2.5 years. He says, I don't understand. This is the old-fashioned way of doing things. Well, nobody does that these days. So I was being very polite, and I knew exactly what he was going to do, come to the thing, and I could have, but I didn't open my mouth. He says, these days all you need to do is this transcendental meditation, Mahesh Yogi's transcendental meditation. You straight away go into this. This is not necessary anymore. This used to be in the old days. Now this is the modern days. So I said, oh really? Oh, that's wonderful. I made a mistake. I should have just gone straight away to that. Bunch of BS. And so this is a very valid question. And even today, it's not as though this is gone and now people... Even today, I would say 100 to 1 people believe this is the way to do it. Okay? So then the question is, what's the problem with this? This is not easy to understand, but let me state it anyway. Okay? And then one has to really resolve it in one's own mind. The reason that it is not exactly the truth is that your status as a meditator is tinged with the fact that you are a limited person. And so this is ignorance. You're not a limited person. You're tinged with ignorance. So therefore, when you're meditating and so on, the effect of ignorance is never gone. So when you come out, and as a result, what happens is that you cannot do Nirvikalpa Samadhi forever. And it is for reason. Why? Because sooner or later the Ajnanam will say, get up from there. And so, for example, supposing you have to go to the bathroom, you have to urinate, or you're hungry, you want to do some, finally. So then what happens is that you may be able to do Nirvikalpa Samadhi for half hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. Ultimately, you have to come out of it. You're back again to the same situation. As we were discussing, you're even angrier, So this is an experiential approach, not a knowledgeable approach. Only when you remove the very ignorance that you are a limited person, then wonderful things happen, because you don't have to have Nirvikalpa Samadhi. This is what we're discussing earlier also. So the Advaita, the non-dual duality, doesn't mean the absence of duality. See, this is an important thing to see. For a Nirvikalpa Samadhi practitioner, the idea is that I don't want any Vikalpa. Vikalpa means Dvaita. So the absence of Dvaita is Nirvikalpa in their mind. Whereas in the minds of a Vedantin, it is despite Vikalpa, you are independent. It's just like, I think I was giving this example, it's like having an ocean that feels that I just want to be water, I don't want to be a wave. But there are waves in me, I want all the waves to subside. All the waves cannot subside. This is a stupidity. If you understand that you are the water, then even if there is a wave, what difference does it make? That is also you. And so there is a huge difference because it is just experiential with no knowledge whatsoever. Anyway, more to be, we can talk about that, but that's basically what Nirvikalpa Samadhi is. Yeah.
You had mentioned about mantra.
I'll repeat it, so it's okay. You don't have to have, I'll repeat your question so everybody can hear that.
Can you tell the difference between a mantra and a sloka?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I am not sure that I have a technical answer for this. The question is, can you tell the difference between a mantra and a shloka? Right? So, first of all, the mantra is Vedic. You see, so Gita cannot have a mantra. So Smriti cannot have but it will be interesting to talk to Swamiji. You can repeat this again. I think this is my view of it. Sloka is simply, and again the definition of a shloka also is probably very precise, that I don't know what that is. What do you mean by just a sentence, and what is a shloka? The shloka means, generally speaking, a poetic composition. It's a very precise poetic composition that has a number of conditions in terms of, for example, the chanda. So the chandas has to be there. So in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, there is a particular chandas used. How many vowels, how many consonants, and so on. When those are fulfilled, then it becomes a shloka. And the purpose of the shloka is that it is easier to commit to memory. Text is not easier to commit to memory, but a poetic sentence which fulfills shloka, the definition of the shloka, becomes a shloka. Okay? So that's a general one. Mantra is one of those shlokas that is Vedic. So now the question that I'm not sure I have the answer to that is, are all sentences from all the poetic sentences in Vedas mantras, or can some of them be shlokas within the Vedic one? That I don't know. So that would be a good one to talk about. Sorry, back there. Yes.
My grandmother used to make us repeat a prayer. And the first line is Stotra Mantrasya. So it is a stotra as well as a mantra.
No, but wait.
Yeah.
Stotra is different from shloka.
Okay.
Okay, stotra and mantra are different. Stotra means a composition of praise. It's a praise, stuti and stotra. So Ganga Stotram and Durga Stotram, all that is chanted here, is called stuti. Stotra and stuti is the same thing. It all comes from the same root. Okay? But that is different from a shloka. That's a different one altogether, yeah.
Guruji, that nature of teaching, when you were speaking about that, I guess yesterday or earlier today, so Prasanna Gambhiryam was one thing that was brought up. I tried to look it up, to read up a little bit more about it. Though I, like, the meaning is understood, Prasanna Gambhiryam, his meaning is understood. Could you please speak a little bit more to that? And also, what other aspects one should be careful about in terms of nature of teaching? Is it like the aghor aspects that we talked about today, daya, and some of the other qualities that are important?
No, I think that you're reading things into it that may not be necessary in terms of what other qualifications there are about the nature of teaching and so on. It's really quite simple. there is, and I will actually come to that in, I think, the fifth Sloka or some. So maybe I'll give you a complete answer at that time, where it says adhivakta. This adhivakta is different from vakta. Okay? And what does that mean, and what is the nature of teaching? It will all come. So if you can just hold your question until that gets, and you can ask me again if you don't completely get it. But I'll give you a brief answer even now, since you asked, instead of doing that. So it's quite simple, really speaking. The teaching of something which is you, which is not visible to you, it's not a thing. Atma is not, because all we are used to seeing are things. We talk about experiences and food and this and that. That are all vishaya. They are all words and objects and so on, so you can objectify them. This is how teaching is normally done. Anything, supposing you want to be a doctor, then you have to learn about medicine, diseases. Disease also is a pratyaksha, it's a visible thing. Medicine is also a visible thing. The whole thing is nothing but something that you can objectify, and so on. Atma is an exception. It is there, but you don't see it. So this is the job of the adhivakta that we will see. But the short answer at this point is that the prasanna gambhiryam and so on is just an incidental quality of teaching. Basically, it is an authentic source of teaching which will transform your life once you understand the Atma. So that teaching is the Brahma Vidya, that is the Atma Vidya, that is Vedanta, Upanishad, you can call it by different names. And it is the methodology. There is a, what is the word used is prakriya. The prakriya means a methodology. There is a methodology of removing the doubts of a person, and those could be through Panchakosha Viveka, Avasthatraya Viveka, Atma, Anatma Viveka. All those are different prakriyas. But those prakriyas all amount to a clear teaching of the Atma which is not visible to you. How that is done is the specialty of the Vedanta. So that's all there is that is. It turns out that that teaching, the quality of that, you can call it prasanna gambhiryam. Because the gambhiryam, as we saw, it means something which is profound. I think a better word than serious is profound. Something really meaningful. It's not flighty. It's not just fun and games and so on. It really lasts for you. So this is the gambhira. So gambhira means a very deep. I think the word serious kind of already gives a feeling that it is there is a big problem somewhere. So no, it's the depth of it, but it's so on. And the inquiry into it is not fraught with a lot of unpleasant work. It's not. It is, in fact, the very first step you take towards it already starts to give you benefits. Beautiful example given here on this point is that if you are very hungry and you start to eat your dinner, you're extremely hungry, you're starving, and you start to eat dinner, you are not satisfied. It's not that you are satisfied only when you finish the dinner. The very first roti that you take with sabzi, the very first step of that itself is very satisfying. You've already reduced your hunger by 1/20th already if you're going to take 20 pieces of the roti. So it's a very gradual kind of a thing, but then the complete satisfaction, of course, comes. Complete satisfaction comes. This is also a very interesting thing, what is called Alambutti. Alambutti means, and this is a very important thing, this is why annam, eating, is a very sacred thing. Very sacred. What do you mean by very sacred? In fact, Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says I think there is only two things in life that will give you alambuddhi. One is moksha, and the other one is you're eating a meal. And what that means is, no matter how hungry you were, there comes a point that you cannot eat anymore. That is called alambuddhi. So you just say, this is what happens after we were eating and so on, and Nilima brought some more stuff on top of that. They really just to not to be impolite, we didn't really want anything more because we had said enough. Just this morning, the pakoras were this morning? I think it was this morning. So people put 3, 4, 5 pakoras on their plate. But there comes a point, if can you have one more pakora? He says, no. So this is called alambuddhi. And it doesn't happen that often. It doesn't happen when you invest in the stock market. It doesn't happen anytime. This is an interesting experience. I remember a long time ago when the Tesla first came. I read about it somewhere, and I don't do much stock, but if there is something that I see, then I have some money lying in it, I just buy it. So long time ago, I bought some Tesla stock when it was $20, I think it was. Within 2 weeks, it became 45. I was so overjoyed, I sold it. And so since then my regret has been so much. So anytime you have sense of satisfaction, it is very relative. You don't get alambuddhi in any other way, except for eating. Eating also, Bhagwan gives you a full stomach only for a short time. After that, I remember this so well, when my mother was alive, so we would have our breakfast and a family sitting there. And then the home cook will come while we are eating. And we are, we're having all the upma and so on and so forth. Then the person comes in and starts to ask my mother, Mem Sahab, lunch ke liye kya banaun? What should I cook for lunch? And I used to sit there by my wife too, and we say, hey, we're having breakfast. Who's thinking of lunch at this point? But fellow has to prepare, ahead of time. So even the alambuddhi doesn't last very long. Maybe an hour or so. That's it. Interestingly enough, there is a Swami, whose name I've forgotten. He did a research, and he published the results of the research. The research was, whenever you get some satisfaction about anything, like example eating ice cream or even food, or having some good news that comes to you, there's a variety of sources of happiness that you get. How long does it last? This was his research. And I remember the results of it, 15 minutes, approximately, give or take a little bit here. If you've overeaten, they might last a couple of hours. 15 minutes. So the alambuddhi is highly temporary, but in Vedanta, that's once you understand who you are, it's not temporary, it's forever. So, yeah. Yes, Raj?
Today morning, you were referring to someone who took a lot of courses and didn't feel any progress, and your suggestion was to show some commitment and progress on commitment. And in the past, I've heard Swami TV also talk about when on the path to moksha, desire getting in the way. Wanting to have moksha can become a desire, and that can get in the way. So when can a commitment become a desire? That's a fine line, it appears to be.
Yeah, I'm aware of that line of argument and so on. So what that means, as I have studied with various acharyas and so on, is that anxiousness to make progress becomes an impediment. You feel you need to be anxious and worried. That's also a form of desire. That's one of the effects of desire. You see, and this is really very, Swami Paramarthananda from Chennai, talks about this a lot and very clearly, so wonderful. And from my own experience also. So desire manifests itself in our life as worry, anxiousness. Worry and anxiousness are not necessary. Not necessary. You have to just submit yourself to it and just wait for the phalam to come to you. So there is a difference between submission and seriousness, commitment you might say, not seriousness again, commitment and so on, and the desire. You don't need the desire for moksha, because if you are on the path, it will come. So it is exactly like the following. Swami Maheshanji just gave a beautiful example of that. He says that supposing you are going on a long road journey, long, 2 hours or so, and like from the Bay Area you're going to Sacramento. Okay. That's a long journey, not in 45 minutes or something like this. During that journey, there are two kinds of people sitting in the car. One person, generally a child, that doesn't know how far I have to sit here, how far it is and how long we have to sit here. The other person is one who knows exactly how far it is and how long it's going to be. The mental states of the two are entirely different. If you don't know how far it is and how long it's going to be, your mind is going to always say, are we there yet? Are we there yet? How come we are not there yet? But the adult can say to himself or herself, and therefore to the child, but not satisfactorily to the child, it will come. So, in the case of the moksha, for a student for moksha, you will know that it will come. If you don't have shraddha towards this, if you're saying, I don't know, I think I'm trying this, but I don't know if this is the right way, then it is the wrong problem. That means you're not ready for it. But once you have shraddha, and in fact I think what I would say is the example of the eating, of just having 1/20th of the roti, is a very good one, because if you are very hungry and you're really not feeling good, you have a stomach pain because of hunger, when you start eating the first one, it hasn't fulfilled you yet but it has given you a taste of fulfillment. And then you proceed on with the thinking that yes, if I keep on eating more, it's going to be completely fulfilled to me. So in the case of a mumukshu, moktumichuhu, you already get some satisfaction even by listening, just for a few classes and here you say, oh, this is good. So this is like taking 1/20th of the roti. You already have a portion of that, you feel good about it. And if you have, this is why there has to be a closeness between, you need to have a lot of trust in me. And I need to have this is exactly what sahana vavatu is. That's a mutual trust. And I have to keep assuring you that, listen, this is what needs to be done. Because it has worked for me. And it will work for you. And so we have to have that trust. So there at that time, it will be like going to Sacramento as an adult. You're not there yet, but you don't have the anxiousness that the child does. So what Swami TV must be talking about is that you have to get rid of that desire also. And in Swami Paramarthananda's words, this unnecessary anxiousness. Okay, I'm not there yet, what's going to happen? Which is a symbol that you are not completely convinced that this is the right path or so. So something like that was what I would say. Yes?
I have a very simple question.
Mm-hmm.
What are the etiquettes of chanting Rudra, the do's and don'ts?
So she's asking what are the etiquettes of chanting Sri Rudram, do's and don'ts. No, this is very simple. You have to know the swaras. If you don't know the swaras, don't chant loudly. You have to know the swaras. And a chanting of a swara without chanting of any mantra, without swaras is not recommended. It doesn't, I don't know if there'll be a negative influence, but certainly there'll be no benefit to you. And so I'll come back to it in a minute, but I see so many people not chanting. I'm sorry, were you raising your hand, Prakash? Oh, okay. I see so many people chanting the Gayatri mantra without the swara. Om Bhurbhava Swaha. I don't even remember how they do that. Om Bhurbhava Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Not the way to do that. You have to know the swaras for Om for the Gayatri mantra. And if you don't know it, it's not that difficult. Uddata, Anudatta, Swarita, these three things you have to know. And actually it's interesting that when I was talking to Shuddhatma about these talks, usually there is some kind of a class in addition to Vedanta class. And we were thinking perhaps we should have a chanting class, that'd be kind of nice. Probably the problem is the time. So the only time would be in the afternoon. And the afternoon is a pretty precious time because you need to have some extended hours just to rest. And because the morning is all taken up, the only time would be between 10 and 11. So that'll be so this is how I didn't push it. So the two candidates for doing that would be either some introduction to Sanskritam or to do chanting. So one thing we could do is to find out how best to learn the swaras. It is best done in person, but it's very possible that these days you could do that online as well. So we can find out. But now to answer your question, it's very simple. The etiquette is to know the swaras, that's all. Then you should be able to chant along with it. Yeah. Sorry, why don't you wait? Okay.
Sure. So I had a simple question following to Anjali. if you don't know the swaras and it will take some time to learn them, what do you do in between? Just not read the text or just read?
No, I think that text reading is not a problem. Yeah, in fact, sometimes when I'm reading this in front of you, I don't use the swaras. Remember? When I can just do that. That's not an issue at all. And also, just reading it by yourself without really disturbing. It doesn't happen very often, but I have seen it happen, where people chant loudly without swaras and disturb what Shuddhatma is saying and what the Panditji is saying, Pujari. That should not be done. But if you're just doing it by yourself, you just tell the Lord that I don't know the swaras yet, but I'm just reading you. That's okay. That's not a problem. Of course, listening to the audio is very helpful, no doubt about it.
So
Yes.
In the same lines, do we do a Sankalpa? Is there any particular time of the day we have to chant?
No, it isn't. There isn't anything with respect to, especially from a Vedantic standpoint. See, if you're going to do puja, see this, I think we mentioned this before also, that if you are a karmatha, then there is, of course, it has to be done in the morning with properly and so on and so forth. But the Vedantic enunciation of Rudram can be done anytime, at any place.
And then we don't have to do the chamakam.
No, you don't have to do chamakam. You just do, chamakam is just added on top of that. It is not an essential part of it, no. You just do, and so what I would really recommend is that you learn the swaras, number one. And then I think the second benefit that comes is when you memorize it. That is where just an amazing experience. You just do it. You're not really distracted by looking at the book. You just do it on your own. But this takes a long time. I think it took us close to 2 years when Ramaswamy used to do this practice every day. And it has to be done one portion at a time. And at that time you're not memorizing it. Then repeating it, I mean, I've been doing it for years. So it takes a while to do, yeah.
Guruji, I have two questions.
Okay.
In one of the previous sessions, you mentioned taking classes and just reading will not help. So we have to do, I think Dhyanam was one, but there may be more things. Somebody needs to like structure so that slowly you make the progress. So if you can help.
So those are excellent questions, and I think you already asked me that, and I thought that we will discuss this in the Satsang. Yeah. Right? So, unless you're living in an ashram and you have a full-time contact with a live guru for a length of time, 2 years, 3 years is the length of time, then the guru will guide you on all the steps and so on. If you are on your own and you're not living in the ashram, which is most of the cases here, then what to do? So the methodology remains the same whether you are in an ashram or not. But it's a lot easier if you are in an ashram. If you're not in an ashram, you follow the methodology with occasional contact with a live guru that you have some close trust with. You have to respect the guru. If you kind of feel, I don't know, this guy is, he talks, but I'm not sure whether he knows anything or not. I'll give it a try. nothing is going to happen. You need to really feel, oh, this guy has something to really tell me. Every time I attend classes, I feel good about it. So that kind of a trust and a respect for the teaching has to develop first. Okay? Otherwise you're lost. Then you have to find somebody else. Just go someplace else and do that and see if you can find somebody else. So once you do that, you have an occasional contact. Like for example in the Bay Area, for those, I have a number of people who I have never met, but I get emails from them saying that your YouTube classes really do something for me. And so I would say that kind of a thing, that they have an association, some respect for me. Okay? But that itself is not enough. Now you have to do a lot of other things. What are those other things that you have to do? So let's talk about that. Okay? It is very simple. If you want to be a doctor, let's say, leave aside, engineering and law, same thing for others. Any specialty like medicine, what do you have to do? Tell me. It's very simple. You have to start with the basics, biology 101. Constituents of a human body, bones, I don't know what they do, I'm not one, but I would imagine this is exactly what happened. We have a number of physicians, they can come and talk to you about it. So you do that first, then you become conversant with the technical terms used in the medicine. Then you become more advanced, you start to put pieces together. And then you become more and more specialized. You retain the knowledge of the fundamentals and you apply it to the next level of your teaching, third year, fourth year, then practice. And that's when you become a baseline doctor. You're not even a specialist. My God, these days the specialization takes a long time. Do you think Vedanta is any simpler than that? It isn't. If the medicine is a very beautiful thing to do because a doctor is a very important person in our life because he can solve our problems. But he can solve a very specific problem. That's it. You can go to you can say, can I go to podiatry? And they'll say, which part of podiatry? Do you want heels or you want... It's just amazing. Incredible how specialized people are. And which is good. They become specialized on that. You think Vedanta, which solves all problems, should be any simpler than that? Of course not. So what Vedanta needs to be done, what needs to be done in Vedanta, is to start at the very basic level. Okay, unless you have that, you're not going to be able to go to the next step. Just attending these classes and so on, the fundamentals are not there. Your doubts will always be there. What does that mean? What does this mean? And so your doubts are not going to be resolved. Now, I would say, if you want to become a specialist, and you need to become a specialist, you cannot just be a generalist. If you want to be a specialist, knowledge of Sanskrit is essential. You asked me this the other day, Poonam, and it reminded me of one time. I don't know exactly when. I think must be 1977 or around there, 78 maybe, 78 I think it was. Swami Dayanand, it's been now 2 years when I have discovered his scholarship, his ability to communicate, and I am just in love with it. I just want to follow him. All other interests are secondary. And my whole thinking is just now, how do I really do this? I was just smitten. So one day, he was staying in a motel in San Francisco. And I think, I'm vague, but I think he was giving some classes in Berkeley across the bay. But he was staying in San Francisco. So I approached him, and in one of the talks that he said, I said, Swamiji, I want to spend some time with you. When can I come and talk to you? So he said, how about tomorrow at such and such time you come to this room number such and such. So I drove all the way from Los Gatos, I think it was. Yeah, I think we were still in Los Gatos at that time. Long ways away to San Francisco, 55 miles. And I went to see him. And so he says, yes, what would you like to talk about? So I said, Swamiji, as you may know, if you don't, I am really a very sincere student. I want to learn all this. This just seems absolutely the right thing for me to do. What would you recommend I do? What's the next program that I should do? And in fact, you know what's interesting? I still remember my own question and his answer. I said, Swamiji, if I have some discretionary time that I can devote to the study of Vedanta, because at that time, I was thinking I have lots of choices. Read books, or meditate, or do, whatever, all those kinds of things. So, and also learn Sanskrit, because he was already using a lot of Sanskrit and so on and so forth. So I said, Swamiji, I'm a very sincere student, what do I do? His answer shocked me and disappointed me. He says, learn Sanskrit first. Vedanta will come later. I said, what? This is I cannot believe you can say that. I was not prepared for that answer. He didn't say that Vedanta will come later, but he says, put the emphasis on Sanskrit. I had already started to learn Sanskrit quite a bit before that, so it was not the first time, but that gave me, and if my teacher, if my guru gives me some advice, I can't just say, this is his view. What does he know about me? I have got my own problem. Changed the trajectory of my learning. I started to get into the depth of Sanskrit as my first priority. And I can go back to this example that I talked about when I was not promoted. And this Ed McCracken was drawing these two curves. So one curve that he drew was, let me do it from your standpoint. So this is the axis. The one curve is like this. And the other curve is like this. And the study of Sanskrit is this. In the beginning, you will not have much time, you'll be frustrated that I need more to spend more time in learning and this, that, or the other. Why am I learning this very difficult language? Sanskrit is a very difficult language. Very difficult language. But my God, once you know it, what opens up for you is enormous. What really opens for you is that the meaning is included in the word itself. This is why when I'm able to read this, I'm able to see the thought behind it. It's not there in any of the vernacular languages, only in Sanskrit. And so this is, if you are really serious, you have to decide. Otherwise you can be very happy just doing a few, Upanishads and so on and so forth. This is the problem that I have. A lot of our students have not invested in Sanskrit, and they want to be very advanced students. And I'm also frustrated. I don't know how to really do that, because they have not really put the work in on learning. So if you're really sincere about this, the first thing you should do is to learn the language. And one of the advantages of doing, tremendous benefit of doing that, you can be on your own. This is the reason I could really enjoy Swami Maheshanandaji's books. I've never met him, but I can hear him talk to me through the language. He communicates through Sanskrit and so on and so forth. I'm very lucky that I had spent a lot of time with Swami Dayanandji, one-on-one, of course, so with a lot of knowledge of Sanskrit both ways. But even when he's not there, I can recognize the depth of the teachers that have the same vision, and I'm able to get into more detail. So you'll be on your own. You don't have to really need a teacher to do so. Do that. Then the second thing you will do is, so the first thing is the study of Sanskrit. The second thing is, fortunately now we have a very good approximation of a live teacher by having good audio and videos available. Okay, still not the same thing as in person, but it is a lot closer to it. And there is actually a prescribed course that we can give you with Tattva Bodha first, etc., etc. And you just embark on it. Don't worry about don't be anxious, as the Raja's question was, that don't have the desire for moksha, and so that will come later on. Just take the next step, and then the other steps will come. So that would be my advice to you.
Very helpful.
Good.
I will connect with you offline about the Sanskrit. Second question I have, as we are looking at this Sri Rudram book from Swami Dayanand, they actually have a Dhyan Shloka and then they have the main Shloka.
Yes.
So if you can just explain.
Yeah, I don't... so the Dhyana Shloka, what the Dhyana Shloka does is that any Dhyana Shloka prepares your mind better with the help of the Rishi. So there is the Dhyana, so there is actually a Rishi behind that, without that mantra. And the blessings of that Rishi will be upon you if you at least go through the Shloka, Dhyana Shloka, and then it will give you more benefit and so on. But I find that it is that itself is a lot of work. You have to really study it and so on. Do it if you can. I've done it, I think, only once, maybe more than once, a couple of times. But now it's to a point when I read the text or chant it and so on, I don't do the Dhyana Shloka. I just go straight to it. So it's an optional kind of a thing, but they've done a very good job of really researching what the Dhyana Shloka is for the individual mantras. Yeah. Satish, you had a question?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I have an audio CD of Om Bhurva Swaha. I have an audio CD which I play for myself every night. Folks, I have an audio CD of the mantra Om Bhur Bhava Swaha Tatsur Varenium Bhargo Devasya Dhimhi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. It's so soothing. I put it on when I wind down. When I go to sleep, I put it down really fast into sleep there. So nice. So take me away from the word. I have to leave the word behind when I go to, in order to have a deep sleep. And this CD, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, assists me in falling asleep, having 6-7 hours sleep. Those folks who want it, I can get copies made up and share it with you.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's interesting. A friend of ours was telling Pami and I that he uses something very similar, especially when you wake up in the middle of the night and you have a hard time going back to sleep. He uses some some mantra like that, a different one, I think. And so, yeah, I think this is a good way to do a preparation for, quieting your mind down. Good. All right, I think we will wind it up, and I hope you have some tough questions for Swamiji, and he will be here tomorrow. And you can ask some of the same questions again, for example, especially Poonam, your question. Yeah, that you can ask him that. Let's see what he says about it. And so because of the lateness of the hour, I think we will dispense with the music. At least I'm very tired. So I'm just going to go. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.